So me, 20-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 21-year-old male, were at a really important work event for an office opening celebration for a company where we are co-workers. He's been working this job for 4 months, and I have for 2. The job is great, and I just happened to land in the same position with him. This event was extremely important, as people with highly important ranks from the company and the government would be present. Our boss told us to dress our best and try to make some connections. I prepared mentally and physically for this event. I planned my outfit, hair, and makeup in advance, as well as preparing conversation topics. As I'm not the most extroverted person, I wanted to give a good impression to the people I met. While at the event, I managed to make conversation with really important people, and overall was having a good time. I felt proud of myself for being able to talk without getting nervous, as I usually would, and received a lot of good comments about my appearance. Halfway into the event, I went to check on my boyfriend to see how he was doing, since I had been mingling with other coworkers. I asked him how he was doing, and the first thing he told me was, "Did you see that woman?" He asked, I then responded, "The pretty one." I assumed he was talking about a specific woman who stood out from everyone else. In an event that is full of mostly men in their 50s, this girl was pretty noticeable, as she had good looks, red hair, a great figure, and overall class and behavior. So, as I answered, he responded with, "Yeah, that one. Let me tell you, if she talked to me and told me she wanted to leave this room, I would be the first to be running out the door with her." Upon his answer, I was shocked. In our relationship, we've been pretty honest regarding what we think. I don't expect him to not find other people attractive just because he's with me. However, I personally don't experience much attraction to pretty much anyone. I understand that we are human, and it's impossible to not have those thoughts in mind. But I have asked him not to express those thoughts to me, as they can result in hurtful comments. After he told me that, I said quietly, "That's not something you say to your girlfriend," and left. I had to spend the rest of the event talking to people while holding back tears. The worst part is our coworkers don't know we are a couple, so I couldn't have any support from the few friends I have made in the office. He has apologized since, but I can't help but feel broken and ugly. It's also not the first time he's made these kinds of comments. I've already had to clarify that I don't wish to hear what he thinks about other girls. In another instance, I told him that I thought we were pretty much equal in terms of looks. However, he questioned what I said and basically joked that he was better looking. I spent the day after the office crying my eyes out, but now I just feel numb. He says he spoke out of turn and without thinking, and that he thinks I am the most beautiful woman, but it doesn't really matter to me now. What do you think I should do? This is a pretty long relationship, and when these slip-ups happen, I know it's because he is just dumb and doesn't think about what he is saying. I think I'm so confused. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. On top of the blatant abuse, this is a very deliberate sabotage of her success. He wanted her off balance when he saw how well she was doing in the situation. He probably isn't nearly as good at the job as she is, and he can't stand it. 10 Bucks says he's into the manosphere. Tate podcast, negging thing too. Boy, bye. Comment 2. I'm not sure why you want to stay. You are just temporary until he finds someone better. And now you know he is on the lookout, because he feels that he is better than you. You want to deflate his ego? Dump him. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around to hear more about this mess. So, after that disaster at the work event, things went from bad to worse. The next day at work, I tried to keep my head down, but I couldn't escape the office gossip. Turns out the red-haired woman my boyfriend couldn't resist was actually the new regional manager's assistant. And guess what? She's been assigned to work closely with our team. Every time I see her, I remember his words. And it's like a punch in the gut. But that's not even the half of it. A couple of days later, I overheard some coworkers whispering. They were talking about a rumor that someone from our office was getting fired for leaking confidential information. My heart sank when I heard my boyfriend's name. I confronted him, and after some dodging, he admitted he'd been careless with some documents at the event. He'd left them unattended, and they'd gone missing. He was the one responsible, and now his job was on the line. I was furious. Not only had he been thoughtless with his comments about another woman, but now his carelessness at work was affecting his career and our reputation at the company. I felt like I was dating a child, not a man. The following day, the regional manager called an emergency meeting. Everyone was tense, expecting the worst. The manager revealed that the leaked documents had been found and the culprit was being dealt with. To my shock, it wasn't my boyfriend who was getting fired. It was another coworker, one who had a grudge against my boyfriend and had taken the documents to set him up. I was relieved, but the damage was done. The trust between us was hanging by a thread. I started to question everything about our relationship. Was I just settling for someone who didn't respect me or take responsibility for his actions? Then, as if things couldn't get any more complicated, the red-haired woman approached me. She'd noticed the tension between my boyfriend and me and offered some unsolicited advice. She told me that she'd been in a similar situation and that I deserved better. It was surreal, getting life advice from the woman who had unknowingly stirred up so much trouble. I took a long, hard look at my life and what I wanted. I realized I couldn't keep making excuses for him. It was time for a change. I decided to focus on my career and myself. I told my boyfriend we needed a break. He was shocked, but I stood my ground. I needed space to figure things out. The aftermath was tough. Work was awkward, and I felt alone. But as the days passed, I found strength I didn't know I had. I was doing well at my job, and without the drama of my relationship, I was actually happier. Then, out of the blue, my boyfriend did something unexpected. He came to me with a sincere apology. He'd been doing some thinking and realized how much he'd hurt me. He'd started seeing a counselor to work on his issues and promised to be better, for himself and for us, if I'd give him another chance. I was skeptical, but I could see the effort he was putting in. It was a step in the right direction, but I knew it would take time to rebuild what was broken. So that's where I'm at now. It's been interesting to say the least, but I'm learning to put myself first. I'm not sure what the future holds for us, but I'm hopeful. Thanks for reading. My boyfriend ignored my calls while I suffered through an abortion alone. So I left him and watched him get arrested at my workplace. A few months ago, I got pregnant with my boyfriend for the second time in a 3-month span. I am young and not ready or able to have a child right now, so I had to undergo a second baby unaliving as a result. The night I was going to take the pill was also the night of my boyfriend's best friend's birthday party. I was uninvited to this party as his friends had turned against me after a night my boyfriend had gotten together with them while we were arguing and accused me of false things and spoke badly about me. As a result, they decided I was no good for him, didn't support him, and I wasn't welcome at the party. Not that I could have gone anyway, since I had to have my baby unaliving and have it done on the weekend, so I didn't miss any work. My boyfriend still went to the party that night, even though I pleaded for him to stay home just this once and explained to them, hoping his friends would understand. He thought it was just wrong for him to miss it and said he wouldn't stay out too late. He left, I took my pill, and within 1 hour, I was bleeding and experiencing excruciating cramps. I was crying and wincing in pain, passing massive clots of blood. I was texting him to keep him updated, and he would update me. It was getting late, so I called him to ask him to come home, and he made me feel super guilty. He said his friends were complaining at him for leaving early at Trout. He ended up leaving at around 11:30 p.m. and was home just after midnight. A couple of days later, his friends messaged him saying the sister of his best friend's girlfriend had mentioned that my boyfriend made her feel uncomfortable and was hitting on her. His friends were initially upset and told him to keep it out of family and flirt with anyone else. He acted totally confused and said he didn't do anything, that this girl is crazy. He blamed it on the girl's history of drug use and said she's not mentally stable and made it all up. I never talked to this girl or even the friends who were also at the party and may have observed something. I reached out to the girl and she ignored my message. I am completely torn and don't know what to believe. It feels wrong to think that this accusation was a complete delusion and had no basis. What hurts me the most is knowing that something went on that night that crossed a boundary in our relationships. All the while, he made me feel guilty for wanting him to stay home. all the while I was suffering in pain alone. He knows how I feel about it, but doesn't really seem remorseful or even take any accountability. He says he didn't flirt or cheat, but I have two completely opposite stories, and I would be an idiot to believe either side. Is my only choice to leave believing the worst or stay believing the best? How do we overcome this breach of trust and love? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Sorry, honey, but this relationship is a bit of a train wreck, but doesn't really seem remorseful or even take any accountability. Just like with the baby unaliving. The second one in 3 months. If he and you were accountable after the first one, a second one wouldn't be needed. If he was accountable and dependable to you, he would have been with you the night of the party. But he wasn't. Of course, he's not remorseful or accountable about hitting on the friend's sister. This is a pattern he lives by. Do what he wants for himself when he wants. And who cares about others? Wake up. This relationship is not a good one to be in. Comment 2. What love? He doesn't love you. He literally left you alone to undergo a stressful and dangerous medical procedure while watching your tears and going, "Nah, I have a party I can't miss," and you're being a real downer about it. You dump him. Edit. I stand by it. It's dangerous. You could end up dead through complications, and I'm not willing to shield that from people to make it more palatable. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for more of my life's drama. So, after the whole mess with the party and the accusations, things just spiraled. My boyfriend, let's call him Mr. Charming, decided to double down on his innocence. He got all his buddies to back him up, saying they didn't see anything out of line. But here's the thing. One of his friends, the one who's always been a bit more honest than the rest, slipped up. He mentioned to someone else, who then told me that Mr. Charming was indeed all over that girl. I confronted Mr. Charming about it, and he just lost it. Said I was trying to trap him, make him look bad. But I wasn't having any of it. I was done being the doormat, done with his lies. So I packed my bags and left. I moved in with a coworker who had a spare room. It felt like a breath of fresh air, finally standing up for myself. But then, the coworker's place wasn't a permanent solution. I needed to find my own space, my own peace. I started working extra shifts, saving every penny. It was exhausting, but it felt good, like I was working towards something better. Just when I thought I could catch a break, Mr. Charming showed up at my work. He caused a scene, begging for forgiveness, making promises. My boss wasn't having any of it and threatened to call the cops. That shut Mr. Charming up, and he left, but not before everyone at work saw the whole thing. I was mortified, but also a little relieved that maybe now he'd get the message. A few weeks later, I found a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I moved in, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my life. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from the girl from the party. She apologized, said she was going through a rough time, and exaggerated what happened with Mr. Charming. She didn't want to cause trouble. She just wanted someone to listen to her. I didn't know what to feel. Angry, relieved, confused. It was a mix of everything. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. Mr. Charming got into some trouble, big trouble. Turns out he was involved in some shady deals, and it all caught up with him. He was arrested, and suddenly, all his friends weren't so supportive anymore. They scattered, leaving him to fend for himself. I watched from a distance, not involved, but not unaffected either. It was a mess, but it wasn't my mess anymore. I had my own life to live, my own battles to fight, and fight them I did. I worked hard, paid my bills, and started to feel like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. Thanks for reading. My stepmother boycotts my wedding because her conspiracy theorist son isn't invited. But when he crashes and causes chaos, I ensure he's escorted out and she learns to set boundaries. My 31-year-old stepmother, who is 58 years old, is refusing to come to my wedding because her 26-year-old son isn't invited. Some background. My parents have been divorced since I was 7 years old, and my younger brother was 4. My mom remarried the next year, and my dad remarried about 5 years later. Both of my step-parents are amazing. I love them both the same as I love my biological parents. While I'm close to my step-parents, though, I'm not nearly as close to their kids. My stepdad has 1 son from his previous marriage, and my stepmom has 3 from before my dad, and then my half-brother is her youngest. For most of them, it's just because we never really spent much time together. My stepdad's son lived with his mom, and I lived with my mom and stepdad, so I only saw my stepmom's sons a couple times a month. We get along just fine, but we aren't super close. One of her sons, however, is a different story. Let's call him Jose. He's just a bad person, blatantly disrespectful, and rude to both his own mother and my dad, sexist and bigoted, and is a very right-wing conspiracy theorist. He is very vocal about these opinions. He works, but contributes nothing to the household. No bills, no groceries, no rent. He's even very dismissive and judgmental toward his girlfriend, who's basically a saint. My stepmother just ignores this behavior. She gets irritated if my dad stands up for himself because then he's yelling at her kid. When my fiance and I go to their house, we basically pretend he doesn't exist, and he mostly ignores us. But my brother and his wife, who visited for Christmas, had a very different experience. Jose spent the entire day spewing nasty things at my dad, trying to get a rise out of him. When that didn't work, he kept trying to drag my brother into deeply political conversations. My brother, whose views are very different from Jose's, repeatedly told him that he wasn't interested in talking about it. But Jose wouldn't let it go. My fiance and I are getting married in October. The wedding party and immediate family will be there the entire week, and the wedding itself is on Friday. Because of his past behavior, we decided not to invite Jose. We knew that my stepmom was a little upset about this, but figured it wasn't that big of a deal. Fast forward to yesterday, and my dad called me to say she wouldn't be coming to the wedding. She said she felt that her side of the family was being excluded from the wedding, and that she didn't want to go if he couldn't go. She's apparently angry with my father for not telling us we should invite him. Apparently because he behaved himself at my brother's wedding, that's enough proof that he'd be okay at ours. Except my brother had a normal wedding. Everyone was together for 6 hours, tops. I have no confidence at all that Jose would keep from saying hurtful things across an entire week, especially to cause my dad pain. How do I maintain a good relationship with my stepmom without risking the peace at my wedding? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Hate to report it, but your stepmom isn't that nice. She's an enabler in every sense and excuses her son's behaviors at the expense of everyone else. She's advocating for a bigot to be allowed around others. I would be willing to be she would happily condemn any person behaving with any ism, yet her kid gets a pass. Every horrible and intentionally mean person in history had a mother. She and her son are not special. Seems they both need to realize that. Comment 2. Stop trying to control how your stepmother feels. It is not your responsibility. Why do you want a relationship with someone who condones such bad behavior in a man? And who allows her son to be so awful to your own father? Like, does that not upset you? Because if I ever saw someone allowing such behavior with my parent, I would be in jail. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around to hear the latest. So, after my stepmom dropped the bomb about not coming to the wedding, things went from bad to worse. My dad tried to talk some sense into her, but she was having none of it. She even started saying that my dad was taking my side because I'm his real daughter, which is ridiculous because he's always treated all of us like his own. Then, out of nowhere, my stepbrother, the one who's always been decent, got into some serious trouble. Turns out he'd been embezzling money from his job. It was a shock to everyone. My stepmom was devastated, and it seemed like her world was falling apart. She had always bragged about him being the successful one, and now this. It was like a house of cards collapsing. In the midst of all this, my wedding was approaching fast. With my stepbrother's scandal, my stepmom was too embarrassed to face anyone. She decided to come to the wedding after all, saying she needed something positive to focus on. But she was a shadow of her usual self, barely talking to anyone, just going through the motions. The wedding week started off tense, with everyone walking on eggshells around my stepmom. But then, something unexpected happened. My half-brother, the youngest, who's always been a bit of a chaotic card, stepped up. He took charge, making sure everything was running smoothly, and even managed to get a small smile out of my stepmom. But just when we thought we'd gotten through the worst of it, Jose showed up uninvited. He made a scene ranting about how he was being excluded from his own family. It was a mess. My dad tried to calm him down, but Jose was beyond reason. He even tried to pick a fight with my fiancé, who thankfully kept his cool. In the end, my uncle had to step in and physically remove Jose from the premises. It was a spectacle, and I was mortified that it happened at my wedding. But something changed in my stepmom after that. She saw the chaos Jose brought with him, and finally seemed to realize the impact of his actions on the family. After the wedding, things started to settle down. My stepmom apologized to me and my dad for all the drama. She even started setting boundaries with Jose, which was a long time coming. As for my stepbrother, he's facing the consequences of his actions, and my stepmom is supporting him through it. But she's not making excuses for him anymore. As for me, I got a bit of closure. My wedding wasn't perfect, but it was a wake-up call for my family. And in a weird way, it brought some of us closer together. We're all just trying to move forward now, one step at a time. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.